Welcome to this podcast, Felix. I'm really glad to have you here. You have been out on a really cool climbing expedition, trying to beat my old record. The first thing I think the listener want to be interested in is, what are your kind of background before starting this project?
Yeah, so first, thank you very much for the invitation. It's quite a unique opportunity and first time doing something like this. And I guess that's also something that applies to my 13 months in Norway, like doing quite a lot of unique new things for me, which kind of excelled in the end in the project of trying to summit all the 2,000 meter peaks. My background, how I got to Norway is like in my master's studies. I first spent an Erasmus semester in Bergen, and then I extended to write my master thesis. And throughout the year in the end of like studying in Norway, I was doing like all kind of different mountaineering trips, a ski expedition in March, for example, in Jotunheimen as well. And it was actually kind of a coincidence when the idea came up, because in last November, I was going to Finse with a friend of mine for a really early start into the ski touring season. It was middle of November. And just a week before, I was thinking about like what kind of project can I do in Norway to end like my year, because there I already knew like I'm gonna be spending like some more months in Norway, and then I was like, how many, like what are the highest peaks in Norway? Because at that point I didn't know it, and then I was looking at 2,000 meter peaks, looks interesting. There are some. And when I got to Finse Hytta, like the first two books that were lying around on the tables were like Norge Fjelltoppe. and I was like, that's kind of a really weird coincidence. And then I started to looking into it a bit more in detail. And that's kind of how the idea of the project started. Like, it's funny because I didn't know that someone did it. So I didn't know about your record in the beginning. I just found out about it like 2 or 3 weeks later.
Wow, cool.
Yeah.
And have you done a lot of mountaineering back in Germany before you went to Norway?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I have quite the mountaineering background. It's kind of developed throughout the last years. I mean, as a child, I was born in Switzerland actually, and like skiing was always part, but like Alpine skiing. And like I spent a lot of vacations with my family in the mountains as well, but that was mainly like hiking and then like Via Ferrata at one point. And when I moved to southern Bavaria for my studies, it was like in 2017, 18. Then I got into the mountain rescue and also like started like more the Alpine mountaineering, ice climbing and so on. All that developed over this, kind of last 6 years.
Yeah, so you had quite a lot of experience regarding like climbing and walking ridges and glacier walking and everything.
Yeah, exactly. So, like from the disciplines, like everything I've been doing like for some years, like the paragliding is probably the newest part for me as well. Like now it's been like exactly 2 years since I've been doing the paragliding. So that's kind of the newest discipline from what I did in Norway as well. But climbing and so on, that's been on the road for 6 years now.
Yeah, because you were thinking about, or you were paragliding quite a bit in this project. And regarding like paragliding, I think that's not a common thing to do in Norway. Like some people are doing it, of course, but it's not a big thing. How did the idea of paragliding in this project started?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I think that's one of the main differences when you look at like like how the Alpine scene developed in like the Alps compared to Norway. Because here in the Alps, it's quite usual these days that like young alpinists also pick up paragliding. I remember back 2 years ago in my course, we were like, I would say 60% of the people were like in a range from 20 to 25 years old. And like all of them were, all of these young people were already like climbing, mountaineering. We were 4 people from mountain rescue. So I guess you can see how like the young people like pick it up as like also it's kind of part of mountaineering and alpinism these days. And that's for sure is a difference to Norway. And my idea was like as I haven't been doing that much paragliding when I got to Norway, I was in Bergen. It's perfect because you can fly from like Hurricane, so like you can just walk outside, do a full dry run, and then fly down back to the city. So it's kind of a perfect training routine. And there's also a paragliding scene in Norway. It's maybe it's sometimes a bit hidden, but there are also a lot of paragliders, experienced paragliders, and I was lucky to learn from some of them. And because I definitely needed to gain more experience to like safely take off in the mountains, because like especially on all the rocky terrains, it's quite challenging. And but I mean, when I was looking at the mountains, and especially in the winter times, I have been to Hurangø in end of March as well for some ski mountaineering, and I was thinking like, oh, okay, here and there this could be an opportunity. And also looking at the map, like where can you cut down like the verticals down, because like I used to have like knee problems as well, and flying down then obviously is like a really nice choice to cut down on the verticals that you have to walk down or even run.
Yeah. Had you looked a lot on the old speed records in the Alps regarding the paragliding stuff when you were doing this? Because I know the two last records in the Alps on the 4,000 meters peak was done with paragliders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny because I haven't. I have to say that in general, like this kind of project is like kind of a contrast to what I usually do, because I'm usually not doing like ticking off lists or peaks. That is really like the first time I was trying to do something like that. And yeah, I mean, of course, it was quite popular in our group of friends as well, there are some people that are way more into paragliding than I am. And of course, like with Kriegel Maurer, when they did the record in this year with the 4,000 meter peaks, it was quite impressive. Also the way they did it with the paraglider. But that was like more like, I was noticing it like once in a while. But also that is such a different level of alpinism and paragliding, what they are doing or were doing. It's so I was like more like recognizing it, but it didn't really play a big of a role for my planning.
Yes, I think the fun part of that is that because I remember I was watching when Uli Steg did the record in the Alps, and then when Kilian did it this year, the real insane record, he was not using paragliders at all. So it was like funny how I felt like before it was like the norm that if you want to take the speed record in the Alps, you have to use paraglider. And then Kilian came and just smashed the record, and he didn't use a paraglider. So I think it's just like interesting to see how it was kind of developing from not using a paraglider to a paraglider, and then Kilian is doing it without. So that was the reason why I asked.
Yeah, it's also funny. I think that's kind of a question in general about projects like this, is like the approach, because I mean, what Kilian did is like beyond my imagination for sure, like the way and the time, of course. But I found it really interesting when, like in the Alps, is also quite common, like how Kilian did it. For example, we'd say like we did the project just human powered, but what is behind that is like that all the gear and so on gets transported by a support team and so on, right? And I found it really funny because like I showed two Norwegian friends the movie North 6. I guess, do you know it? It's from Roger Schily and Simon Gittel when they were climbing the 6 big north faces of the Alps. And they also traveled with the bikes in between. And the Norwegian friends of mine, they were saying like, no, they didn't do it human powered, because they were just cycling. They didn't brought their own gear. It was transported for them. And I found that really interesting because I would say it's kind of, the Norwegians have like a really honest approach, like on these kind of projects. They want to do like everything by themselves. And if they say human powered, that means they got the 40, 50, 60 liter backpack carrying everything by themselves all the time. And I think that's also, I mean, it's not that you have to compare projects here and there. It's just that you should be honest about what is going on. and that is like also what is like really impressive from Kriegel and so on, that they were walking all the time, they were carrying all their stuff. So that is like one thing that really stands out for me there as well. It's like every kind of project, I would say, like has their points where the athletes pick themselves what kind of style they want to go for. And that is like sometimes for me even more impressive, like the style, how they did it. Like not looking too much at the time, but rather the way.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the Norwegian style is kind of, or the Norwegian norm with doing it like without any help or transportation is, I think it's coming mainly from the Arctic expedition a lot of Norwegian have been doing. And so that's probably the reason why, because then you have like these really strict rules about unsupported, unsupplied stuff. And then people are thinking like, yeah, if you are doing it manpower, then it must be like unsupported, unsupplied, because that's what we are hearing a lot about in the news and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And I just found it super interesting because like for us, it was like, oh yeah, super nice project they did and so on. And I like read the first impressions then of the Norwegian was like, wait, what? No. And I was like, oh, okay, it's like a different mindset in that way.
Yeah. And Felix, I'm really eager to hear about how you planned the whole expedition, because I feel this project is like a lot of the important stuff are happening before you're actually starting the trip. Like one thing is executing it, but the other thing is like to have a good plan. And you're planning this for 9 months?
Yeah, kind of around 9 months. So it started like end of October, were when the first ideas were coming, and then like from November on December, they were kind of like there was like mainly already acquiring like some support from sponsors, which is a really interesting topic in itself, because I haven't been on social media at all at this point. And it was clear for me that like I definitely need some support, because I financially can't afford it, because like the gear will wear down, like especially shoes, for example. I guess for this project is like when you look at the maps and so on, you really quickly realize that there's a lot of rock you've been walking on for a long time, and it just wears down. Like not talking about like snows, hail, ice and so on, but like just the walking on the rock. And it's so different from the Alps. Like you don't have like that paths. I mean, if you look at the Alps, like mountaineering is like we already have a lot of descriptions, guidebooks, so much detail you can write. You can probably watch these days a video about more or less any tour you want, except for the really extreme and rare ones. And in Norway, it was like first looking at it and then like, okay, where to start? Because it's not like, oh, we have this one guidebook. I mean, you have the Fjelltoppe books, which are super nice. But also I wanted to include like not always like the easiest way to the peaks, but also like some climbing, right? Or like to make like logical lines. That is, I guess, something for me, like to combine things in a logical line and like think of how can I like link up as many peaks as possible. And that it's not only like easy, but it makes fun, and I can combine the trail running, mountaineering, and the paragliding. And I used some maps that I have access to from Mountain Rescue in Germany. We are lucky there to have support where we can also download offline maps. And it is funny because like when it says like on the legend, oh, it's a trail, a Norwegian trail, is way different from a German or Austrian trail, because usually in the high mountains it is just non-existent. But I really like that, because it's like for me like going a bit more to the fundamentals of like, I mean, it's not really exploring, but like you have to go on your own with the pathfinding and everything, and you really need the experience. And it also leads up that you are really on your own for most of the time, whereas in the Alps, it's getting more and more crowded. And I don't want to blame anyone for that, right? I'm also part of it. I started the sport at one point as well. But that was, I guess, one of the main challenges, to find like the ways. And then like with Peakbook, it was really the tool of like getting the first ideas how you could link up some peaks. And then I was usually combining and back checking on 3D maps like FatMap, for example. And yeah, checking like, oh, maybe I could go there. That could be a nice launch site for the paraglider. And then I like collected everything. On Outeractive, you have the possibility to like make a list with many tours, and then they show up on the map as well. So I could back check on the map which areas I covered. So I usually did like work in the evenings for some hours and like focusing on one region and saying like, okay, today I do all the playing for this region, today I do this. And so it like came all together in the end.
Yeah, so you kind of planned each ideal route in a way for each trip beforehand. Like, I would probably go this route, and then I will take this route to connect like the next part, and then planning each route by themselves in a way.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and also like I kind of differentiated quite a lot depending on like the difficulty, because like on some it's like you see on the map, okay, it's no steep terrain, you can basically walk everywhere, and then I was just like putting like 3 dots connecting where like just the lines, and like, okay, that I will figure out when I'm there. And yeah, I mean, as always, like in the mountains you have to adjust your plan, so then there was also a lot of like change when you really got onto the trip. Like sometimes like you had to skip some mountains, and sometimes you were able to just like link up another mountain. Like when we did Smørstad-traversen, for example, we just ran over to Storebjørn as well, because we were like, okay, yeah, we were in time, just do it as well, get the big crevasse done before it gets too late in the year. And yeah, so always adjustment on the way.
Yeah, that's interesting, because then you had a totally different approach than me on the planning phase, because I almost didn't plan any exact routes, I would say. For me, it was I ended up learning programming. So I was programming the whole problem in Python with like just having a lot of big data set with a lot of data, where I put in how difficult the mountain was, and did like different colors for different problems, and then adding text box so I could click on the map and find out like, okay, if I want to go to this mountain, this way will be difficult if I'm walking from there because that and that. And then I was kind of putting in the information, and then the plan was kind of just to have as much information about all the different or all the difficult mountains, and then plan out from there, and then kind of improvised during the trip. But it was important for me to have enough information beforehand, so I had kind of a really good understanding about where I could hike up or approach the mountain from, and then go from there. So for me, it was all a lot about just gathering as much information as possible, and then not planning any exact routes at all.
Yeah, I mean, I like you did it with a tent, right? So that is like also something where which I find really impressive on one way, and the other hand, it like enables you to like, as you said, like approach it the way you did, like of, okay, I see where I'm gonna go tomorrow, and then maybe I can approach it from this and that way. Because like as I was like traveling with my car, where I had like the gear, because I had to adjust it quite a lot with the paraglider, for example, I had like to come back to certain points as well, and I had to look how accessible are they, and that like kind of limited in a way, but also I found it quite nice, because like then sometimes you really had to plan it like to like not walk back and forth one section 3 times, and then sometimes it got longer, but also you had to keep in mind, oh, I have to drive or get over to another place, and or like where I have safe spots kind of when the weather gets bad, and I was happy to have that for most of August. Then
Did you do any specific training beforehand?
No,
No.
not really specific. I mean, in my first semester in Bergen, I had quite a lot of time. So my usual schedule a week was doing paragliding once or twice a week, combined with trail running each time, and additionally have another trail run at least, and going climbing 3 or 4 times a week. But the climbing in itself, I wouldn't really call that big of a training for the project, as like and that was also something which was kind of clear to me from the beginning, that like the technical aspect, like climbing difficulties and so on, that wouldn't be a problem for me, because it's like depending on where you go. Of course, you can take more difficult routes, right? But if you go for the mountaineering routes, like the difficulties, for me at least, were like really manageable. So I didn't have to train for that. For me, it was like more the question like, will my body stand up to like the consistent, like high, like altitudes that you cover each day and the distances.
Yeah.
And therefore I didn't do like that much long runs, like more 10, 15k, sometimes 20, or I did one marathon in Bergen, the Sevenfjell, but that was only once. So just kind of my normal training routine I will do every week, usually when the weather is good.
Yeah.
And
because I often said that to train for a project like this is really difficult. You can in a way go out and run for 2 hours, but it will not help you, because what will kind of making up the big difference is how you are able to walk after 10, 12, 14 hours in a way. That's where the kind of the difference between people are laying anyway. And if you're going to train that in a normal day, then you can't have like a normal life, because you have to hike for so long in many days, and it's almost impossible to prepare for when you kind of have a normal job or you're studying or anything.
Yeah, I guess like as you say, it's the point of like, it kind of depends also on your character and your experience and what you are willing to suffer, and like the mental mindset, I guess, is one of the most important as well, like because after 12 or 13 hours and okay, we still have another 4 to go, there is no, like, you don't really have an option. You should know beforehand, like, okay, it's going to take 17 hours, I will push through. And like to know that, because the body usually can do it, like from most of the people, right? But it's the mental mindset to know, okay, also be prepared to know what is coming next. Like, I would also guess it's quite intimidating when you're on the run and after 12 hours you don't know how far it really is. But if you know, okay, it's going to be just another 2 kilometers on the ridge, okay, gonna take 4 hours now, but I know then we go down and we come back. It's like, at least for me, it felt like really good that I liked all the preparation done before, like give me the security to know like how the route will go through the day, and that it's not really much unexpected coming towards you.
Yeah. And how did you plan, like where and what mountain to do in what order, and when you were gonna start? Did you have any specific things you did beforehand or during the trip regarding that?
You mean like on the order of the mountains? Tops?
Yeah, the order. How did you decide, like, I'm gonna take one ridge in Horungane, and then I'm gonna go over to Breheim, for example? And how did you kind of figure out what way of the different hikes you want to do things in?
So the idea, like coming from an optimal weather perspective, would have been like to like tick off the technical traverses with the glaciers first, especially the ones like, for example, Storebjørn, where you really know you have like a big crevice that can like get quite nasty depending on the situation in the year. And so that was the idea, to like go there and start there. But then the weather changed, and I had to kind of vary it quite a lot. But in general, it was like getting done like the most technical traverses first. I mean, it's kind of funny, I guess, that like starting the project with Styggedal and Skagoldsryggen, that were the first 2 days. And yeah, I really wanted to. Was like 2 points. Like first, it's obviously one of the most exciting glaciers or dangerous glaciers also. And I mean, I started 18th of July, which was 3 weeks later than I really wanted to because like of the heavy snowfall and bad weather beginning of July. And I was like, okay, we should go there before the glacier gets too bad again, because like I was trying to go for Styggedalryggen last autumn, but there was already too late. And
Yeah.
so
And then it's Hjertvassbreen, that's the main problem.
Yeah.
Do you think? Yeah.
Exactly. And yeah, I mean, that was the basic idea. And then as I had like many different friends that were accompanying myself during the project, I also had to organize like when and where can I pick them up, because like some were coming with the train from Trondheim, some were coming by car, which made it quite easy, but also some were flying to Bergen and then had to get somewhere by bus, and also takes time and a lot of organization. And I think that's one of the things that I underestimated, like the planning that will still take place on the project and how much time it will also consume.
Yeah. Yeah, I see. And for Hjertvassbreen, I was not able to go up the glacier on Hjertvassbreen, or the Hjertvassbreen, when I was doing the project, because the glacier was super nasty, and it was like we heard like this big gunshots in a way, like can shots from it, and then we were just going straight lining up the Hjertvassbreen, and we had to climb up there, and I think we spent like half a day just climbing up to Hjertvassbreen because it was so bad conditions on the glaciers.
Yeah, I guess that can get really intimidating. I mean, when we were going up, we had fog, and I was also, I think that was one of the situations where it was kind of a 50-50 if you should go or should not. And because we couldn't see anything, and I gathered information from the mountain guides that they were doing the route 2 days before, and like the glacier in itself was super good, but we also heard one crackling when we were just about to start to get into the Serak area, and then we were like, okay, but nah, it felt good. So there was like this kind of feeling that you sometimes have. You can't really explain it, I guess. But it was like saying, yeah, okay, go. And then we were quite quickly, of course, because like pushing through. And it worked out super good, and we didn't had any crevices really that were open. So that was super nice. And then in the late afternoon, when we were on the ridge going to Central Tint, then you also heard like the crackling down of the Seraks, and you were like, yeah, happy to not be down there right now.
Yeah. When will you say the ideal time is to start this project if you would have done it again?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, during the project, I had to talk with some friends about like how crazy would it be if you would do it in the winter times, or like, which makes it more challenging for many peaks, but also makes it more accessible to some as well with with skiing. And I wouldn't do it in winter. It's that will be, if someone does that, that will be a really hard project as well. I think like if you can start like beginning of June, because then you would, I guess, have to transition depending on how much snow still falls in the high mountains. But you could do some of the peaks where you have to walk a lot still by skis, and then you can transition to the summer mountaineering season while still having good glacier conditions. or like towards the end of June, so you can start completely with skis, depending on the year. But that I would say, and that was also like my plan, like end of June, beginning of July, and then have it quite good if the weather in the summer plays with. But August this year really said no.
Yeah. Yeah, because my thought, like, if you're starting in early June, then you have the ski season, and that's a good thing as long as you have good weather. The problem with the ski season is that when it's getting foggy and a lot of clouds, then everything will be total whiteout, and then it's kind of scary to go, especially the more technical mountains. So that was kind of I was going a little bit back and forth if it ideal to start with the snow or just start just after. So I ended up starting just after.
Okay, so you also didn't do a one tour on skis, so also like after the ski touring season.
Yeah, I did everything on foot, and I was kind of trying to make this weather model, trying to predict when I could start when it was not any snow at all. So I was putting up like weather models, and then I would say like from my weather models, I found out that around middle of June, then it will be no snow, for example, in Rondane. And that's the first place that it will be accessible. And then you kind of have to work with the weather and the snow melting. So that was how I did it. And yeah, started in middle of June. And I think like from my experience now, the most ideal thing is probably to start in end of June. Then you have like the best conditions are starting. But again, it's depending on how long you want to do the project. If you are doing it really fast, then it's probably best just to do everything in July if you're doing it in 1 month. But yeah, like a ideal situation. But for me, I was planning for 100 days. And then I was thinking like, okay, then I had to maximize the season on both sides. And then I found out like middle of June was the ideal.
Yeah, I also would have like started earlier, but it was kind of like fixed dates with like the master thesis of myself, of handing that in or finishing it at the uni. That was kind of like limiting me, unfortunately, a little bit. But also was kind of a motivation to get it done to then finally start the project. And yeah, but I mean, I guess it's really hard to predict. Like in Norway, when we saw this huge snowfall this beginning of June, when you had like proper winter climbing conditions all over, then you have to reschedule, right? Because like if you get like 50 centimeters of snow, it's no way of moving fast on foot. It's just not going. You lose so much time.
Yeah, I had to stop for 3 days because of snowfall in June. Yeah. When I was doing the project in the beginning, I was like, yeah, we had to turn around on Uranostin, just under the top. And then I was sitting there for 2 or 3 days just waiting out the weather. And yeah, that was a really hard thing. And that was on day 4 or something. It was real in the beginning. And then I was starting questioning the whole project because the weather and the condition was so bad.
I can see that.
Yeah. And did you have like a goal of how many mountains you should have on different points of your expedition, or did you just went out there and just doing as much as possible?
Yeah, it was like kind of going a little bit day by day, and I mean it's hard to predict, I guess, but when I was starting to plan the project, I knew that I will have like the time or like a window where I can do the project in, and I knew that, or I was estimating that from my experiences, I should have the physical shape to do it, like if my body works with it. I mean, as I have never done a project like this before, I couldn't be certain, right? It could have been that like my knees got so bad, like after 1.5 or 2 weeks, that I must have said like, oh, okay, I have to abandon the project. Could have happened, but apart from that, like I was like kind of really sure that I can do it, and also like in a shorter time if the weather aligns. Um, and then it was just going like day by day and like looking on how can I combine the tours, and it was like also, I mean, I guess also the same for you, like which trips are possible to go on solo when you don't have someone to go with you, because on some it's just really dangerous, I would say, like to go on your own. And also like it helps sometimes, right, when you have like also other people that push you through when you are 17 hours on your way. It's nice to not be there completely on your own, but you have another friend of yours which you can joke about stuff and so on, and just keep the mood really good.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I'm totally agreed. Like I say, for my project, one of the biggest reasons I was able to do it that fast was because I had so many people on the project, and I had a lot of people without any knowledge about climbing or glacier walking or anything. So I was kind of guiding everyone there. But people were really eager to have this experience, so then they were able to push really hard, and I had a really nice time just being able to get to know people, and they were having a good time, and that was, I would say, that's one of the main reasons why I was so motivated for doing it.
no, yeah, I can absolutely see that. And yeah, I mean, of course you could do it everything on your own, but especially also on the glaciers, it's on some of the glaciers you don't want to be alone. It's
No, exactly, and then it's more stupid. They're still like
yeah.
try to push through everything. And will you just tell us about like a normal day for you on this trip? Like, of course, every day is different, but what was like the normal, typical day in times of like when did you wake up, where did you normally sleep, and
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's hard, but like a general day, I would say like started around 6:30 or 7 latest, and yeah, then making like just a quick breakfast. And for me, it was usually just oats with dried fruits, nuts, milk powder. It's like something that you can carry around everywhere without it getting like bad. And yeah, then preparing, or like I prepared usually the backpack also like the evening before, of course. As I was doing like many fast trips, I was also using like only a 16-liter backpack, so like keeping the weight down there as well, like being really minimalistic. And then started like running on the shorter trips, and when it was getting like a more alpine, then we were starting like in a slow walk and so on, like to not get exhausted too fast. And yeah, then we kept on like going through. Like for some of the days we started way earlier, so the earliest we woke up was like at 12 p.m. so or 1 a.m. That were also some days, and yeah, then like the goal usually was to start early and be back early, so you have time in the late afternoon, evening to like get some rest and have enough time for cooking as well and preparation. Because and then like yeah, when getting back, it was like yeah, okay, if you're lucky you get to shower. Shower were really appreciated, of course, like in a campground. And yeah, then prepared food and everything for the next day as well. Like already like plan, okay, how many bars do I'm gonna get, how many lefse I got, by the way. Didn't know about it before, but that is a really nice comfort food for these big trips. And yeah, and that was like yeah, super nice to have this kind of routine to like come back early and then prepare everything fast as well, and then yeah, get straight to cooking, maybe have some leftovers from the day before. That was something that when staying on one place with the tent for a longer time, we kind of had a little bit of leftovers, like from the evening before, so that when we get back to the camp, we can immediately eat something and then start cooking also the next meal. So we, yeah, at least eat something. I mean, you can't eat enough when you have like 3-4 days where you burn like 6, 7, 8,000 calories or more. But really, that was kind of a routine that also like eating throughout the day to force yourself to like eat every once in a while, because like you just lose so much. And yeah.
Did you lose a lot of weight on this project?
The thing is, I haven't had a scale, so I didn't know my weight before I left, and when I had to finish or abandon the project at one point. I definitely lost weight in the first place, but when I abandoned the project and I was getting back to Bergen for some days, and like also when the weather was like completely shit there, and like I was eating again, then I gained a little bit of weight like after a week, and I was like kind of not expecting that at all. But then I also recognized that my thighs like got even more muscular throughout the project, which makes sense when you are walking that much.
Yeah.
But like if you just look at the period of when I was on the run there, I definitely lost weight.
Yeah.
But like
1, 2. And that's kind of normal. I think I started 74 kilos, and when I finished, I was like 65, I think.
Oh yeah.
65 or 67, so like 7 kilos. But I would say that was what I was expecting. So I was losing quite a lot of weight on that trip.
Yeah, I mean, what was helping me at one point was that I have some friends that were like studying in this kind of like nutrition and so on, and I was having like some feedback with them like before the project and during the project. And I would say that I eat quite like healthy food in a way that I don't take that much. Like I usually just drink water, for example. Like plain water is everything I drink usually on these kind of projects. And then they were asking like, oh, do you put something in your drinks to like gain some more calories and so on? I was like, no, never done it. And then they were like, yeah, maybe you should start doing that. And so I did start doing that at one point towards the end of the project, and it really felt that it had an impact, filling up the calories again.
Yeah, because I think that's one of the biggest or most important thing. I remember talking to a nutrition after my project, and I asked her like, what do you think about that? I've been eating 200 gram of chocolate bars every day for the last 2 weeks, and then she said like, the most important thing for you in a project like that is probably just to get enough calories, so it's not that important anymore what you're eating, as long as you are eating and getting as much calories as possible.
Yeah, and especially make use of the rest days, I guess, right? If you have one rest day, then really try to eat a lot.
Yeah. And did you sleep mostly in a tent, or did you sleep in the D&T cabins or in the car?
Yeah, that was kind of a super wild mixture of like sleeping in the tent, like when being at Gjende. We were sleeping at Gjendeby in the tent at the tent place, and also Memoryby was only in the tent. And when I had some friends in Horungane, we were staying at Totagrø in the car, just at the big parking lot, which also coming from the Alps is quite a nice place that they have a service cabin there. I have to say that's really appreciated, and I think that's a really nice way to accommodate alpinists. I also like sometimes just sleeping in a tent at the circle there, like on the grass hill at Totagrø, when I was staying there on my own. And also sometimes in the cabin, when the weather got really worse, it was really nice to find like a place where you have a roof above your head. Because like the problem is like with the tent, and I mean I think you were mentioning that once, is then when everything gets wet, you have to pack it the next day. You can't dry it, and that is kind of a big problem. And so there I was happy to have friends with cars, or like to sleep once in a while in a D&T cabin.
What kind of tent did you use?
So I have one really old one from Outwell, just a normal 3-person tent. I got that through a membership some years ago. So like nothing special, quite heavy, but it's spacious. So it was perfect for like this setting up a base camp. So we were using that at Gjende. But for also the crossing in Rondane or so on, I have a really lightweight tent from Samaya, which is kind of 1 kilogram for 2 persons. And
the Radical 2.
It's the Assault Ultra, actually.
Assault Ultra. Yeah, that's the. I think I have the same. It's the lightest one they have, isn't
yes,
it?
exactly.
Or, like the high mountain super light.
Yeah, where you can also clip in if you really want to, if you're on ledge or so. They have a sling.
Yeah,
so,
I have the same.
Yeah, it's super nice to have like a tent that is so lightweight, and yeah, we've been using it also in the winter times for the ski expedition, and also there it was super nice to have a small lightweight tent, and not that much extra weight, and also fits in like in the small backpacks, as I try to really cut down the weight and backpack size these days.
Yeah, because you were using 18 liters when you did the traverses, more technical traverses as well?
For when we did the bivouac, I was using like a 40 liter or a little bit less, like 35. For example, Memru Tindane. With Mats, there it was, when doing a bivy and you have to bring the sleeping bag, then it's you have to take a bigger backpack. Also, this kind of trips with the bivy were always like a combination of like glacier and rock climbing, so you had to bring more gear. But for example, the Knutsholzrund, that was the longest tour, 17 hours. We were quite fast, especially for that both of us didn't know or haven't been there before. And there we were also using like only the trail running style backpacks, 16 liters, and I think from Stian it was 12 or so quite small backpacks.
Yeah, that's really small. I used a 40 liter on the whole project, I would say.
No, that's I mean it's I also learned that, I mean, in the Alps also, like, this light and fast is, I guess, like more spread out than in Norway. And I mean, I met many people during the project which were also really fast. Like, that's also when some people say like, "Oh yeah, you're crazy." I'm like, no. I met some persons that they are doing way other stuff. They just don't talk about it that much, or don't talk about it at all. But there are some persons that go really, really light, and so you can always bring that approach to the extreme, right? But like, especially also with ropes, I mean, that is, I guess, also one part where you can save, but you have to really evaluate like the safety if you bring a proper rope, because we had, for most of the time, we're using like a rappel line, which is super good enough if you know how to use it, and also we're doing many passages with static rope.
Yeah, did you use like a static rope there?
No, it's a semi dynamic one.
So you are able to climb on it as well.
Yeah, you're technically not allowed by the producer to climb on it. But if you know the material a little bit and the backside of it, then you have like some safety margins where you can use it.
Yeah, and that's like a 30-meter rope, probably?
No, 60 actually. So it was a full 60, wow. But like 6 millimeter cord. And yeah, it's because like for the rappels, like the 60 was necessary to not like lose too much equipment. And yeah, but you really felt like sometimes when you were knowing that like the rappel were made for like a proper dynamic rope, that you had to like slide off the rappel because you were missing like the last meter. But yeah, it wasn't too critical.
This was a really interesting talk with Felix. I just had to cut it here because it's getting too long, I think. So I will post it in 2 different episodes. So I would say this is everything for now. I will link Felix's social media in the link down here so you could follow him. And I really hope you are ready for the next episode as well. We will continue digging into this trip, the equipment, the risk management of the trip, everything, how it was to stop the whole expedition and everything else. So thank you so much for this time, and I will see you or hear you, or you will hear me